From Recorded Future News and PRX, this is Click Here. The war in Ukraine has now lasted longer than World War I. And when a war lasts that long, it's not just the weapons that change. The people fighting it have to change too. And success takes a certain kind of person. Someone who's comfortable experimenting. Someone who doesn't mind crashing a dozen prototypes to make the 13th one work. And we found someone like that. So how old were you when you flew your first drone?
I was 12 when I flew my first drone.
Okay, so you've been flying them a little bit more than a decade.
And crashing them since the beginning.
From Recorded Future News and PRX, this is Click Here, a show about the people making and breaking our digital world. I'm Dina Temple-Raston. For years, the internet has been producing people like Olaf Hichwa, people who learned by trial and error, who taught themselves skills by watching YouTube videos. Today on the show, how that turned out to be exactly the kind of person a very modern war needed.
We're a bunch of internet kids that like to fly really, really fast.
Stay with us. So let's rewind. Long before drones became one of the defining weapons of the war in Ukraine, they were a hobby, a sport, even an obsession. And that's what it sounds like. That's a drone race in the middle of a cornfield.
We set up these tracks wherever we can in our backyards, in these big events in the middle of cornfields. And it's kind of like F1, but in 3D. You have these boxes that you have to fly through and make racing lines through them and pass your friends and beat them, just like in a Formula One race.
This is Olaf Hichwa, and he grew up racing drones in places like that.
A lot of requests to my mother, my incredible mother, to drive me to faraway places, to random cornfields.
The competitors wear goggles, not because they look cool, but because the goggles let them see what the drone sees. Put them on and suddenly you're inside the machine. The world rushes towards you, trees, gates, the ground, your friends, everything arriving at 100 miles an hour.
We're a bunch of internet kids that like to fly really, really fast.
And are there crashes?
Oh yeah, there are a lot of crashes and they're explosive. The drones slam into the gates at over 100 miles an hour. They crash into each other.
So how old were you when you flew your first drone?
I was 12 when I flew my first drone.
Okay, so you've been flying them a little bit more than a decade.
And crashing them since the beginning.
The way Olaf remembers it, drone racing wasn't really a sport. It was a corner of the internet that somehow spilled into real life. They were teenagers who learned engineering on YouTube, soldered electronics at the kitchen table, and drove hours to random fields so they could destroy something they'd spent all week building, and then they'd build it again. Every crash taught them something, not just about engineering or racing, but about iteration. Fast iteration. A burned out motor, a cracked frame, a drone that suddenly dropped out of the sky. Figure out what happened, fix it, try again. The cycle could happen half a dozen times before lunch, and eventually, in one of those cornfields, Olaf met another teenager who seemed just as obsessed as he was. A guy named Soren Monroe Anderson.
Well, we were both very young teenagers, surrounded by a sea of nerdy adults. I think we were the only...
The way Olaf tells it, they recognized something in each other almost right away. Not classmates, not teammates, something closer to co-conspirators. Two kids building and tweaking drone racers to make them faster.
He was a mechanical thinker. I was an electrical thinker. I'd like to think that my electrical designs were much better. His mechanical designs were much better.
Neither one of them came out of a military program, or a defense contractor, or even an engineering school. They came out of the internet. How did they learn how to build drones and fly them?
Both of us watched a ridiculous amount of YouTube.
Pretty quickly, drones stopped being just a hobby. They became this thing they organized their lives around.
We were forced to go to school. We did not like school. We would both sprint home from the school buses to go build drones, and we both thought that if we could make drones make money, we could make it our life, and we didn't have to do other.
At the time, none of this seemed especially important. It was a hobby, an obsession, maybe the foundation for a startup one day. But mostly it was just two kids spending thousands of hours learning how drones behaved, what made them fly, what made them fail. When the war in Ukraine began, Olaf found himself paying attention for an unexpected reason. Soldiers there sounded like drone racers. They talked about signal loss, battery life, range, flight stability, the kinds of problems he'd spent years trying to solve. And that surprised him. Because Olaf had never imagined those skills belonging in a war. He was still a world away from it all, living in California, working at a startup. Then his friend Soren called.
I stepped right outside to try and get out of earshot of my boss. It was a very small startup, and I was the...
His friend had what sounded like a completely insane idea.
It was absolutely necessary that we both go to Ukraine and start working on this technology.
Quit your job, come to Ukraine, help build drones.
My default instinct is no, this is crazy. I love where I am. I love what I'm working on, and I have no reason to just drop everything and go to Ukraine. But
Soren had started talking to people in Ukraine almost every night. And he kept telling Olaf the same thing. Get on one of these calls, then you'll understand.
The problems that they raised just seemed to be kind of exactly what Soren and I know how to fix.
And that was the thing. The conversations weren't really about war, at least not in the way Olaf had imagined. Nobody was talking strategy or geopolitics. They were talking about drones, why they failed, why they crashed, how to make them fly farther, and how to make them fly better.
You know, my drone is shaking in flight. How do I fix that? My drone doesn't have this kind of range. My drone...
What struck Olaf wasn't that people in Ukraine were using drones. It was the pace with which they were using them. Problems that might take months to solve in the commercial world were being worked through in days, sometimes hours, because every improvement mattered. More range meant reaching a target. A stronger signal meant getting through jamming.
I remember I lit up. I was so excited. I was like, well, I designed a custom PCB for this application almost in the drone racing days.
The more Olaf listened, the stranger the situation seemed. People on the other side of the world were describing problems he'd already spent years thinking about. Problems he'd solved for fun, in cornfields, after school.
Before I knew it, I couldn't go to sleep because I was just staying up unbelievably late working on their designs, and I couldn't wake up on time for work. And while I was at work, I kept going back to like, when can I go design PCBs?
PCBs, printed circuit boards, the electronic guts inside a drone. At first, Olaf treated it like a side project. Get off work, go home, open his laptop, and start sketching ideas for people he'd never met. Then he'd look up and realize it was 2 a.m, then 3, then 4. And eventually, he found himself spending more time thinking about drones in Ukraine than the startup he was being paid to work for. Not long after that, Olaf was on a train to Kyiv. That trip would change more than his career. When we come back, Olaf arrives in Kyiv. Stay with us. The train trip from Poland to Kyiv takes about 20 hours, long enough to imagine what a city at war might look like. Olaf boarded it for the first time in 2022. His parents hated the idea. Olaf was nervous about it too. But when the train finally pulled into the station, the first thing that struck him wasn't the war. It was how normal everything looked.
I was like, I'm in Paris. There is no difference between this and Paris.
People were going to work, meeting friends, living their lives. The war was there. You could hear it in the air raid sirens. You could feel it in the conversations. But most of the time, it just sat beneath the surface. And then, one afternoon in Kyiv, Olaf stumbled on the war in an unexpected place. A bake sale.
I saw a bake sale on the side of the street, and I recognized a poster with one of my favorite toy drones on it.
A toy drone, or at least something that looked like one. For years, Olaf had thought of drones like that as racing machines, things you flew through gates and cornfields, things you crashed for fun.
The person running the bake sale was actually the wife of a warfighter, and she was raising money to buy one of these drones for her husband. What he wanted was one of these allegedly toy-grade drones because they were so much more effective.
More effective. Not more expensive, not more sophisticated, more effective.
And at that point, I realized that what my co-founder and I had been working on for our entire adult lives was a national security requirement.
A few days later, Olaf found himself in an underground drone workshop near the front.
And there are stacks of these drones, and I see a pick-and-place machine. It's this robotic instrument that assembles chips onto circuit boards.
This is the thing you had in your friend's basement.
Exactly.
For Olaf, the surprise wasn't the technology, it was the pace. The teams he met in Ukraine weren't waiting to improve a system. They were making changes constantly, sometimes every day.
In America, we take 4 to 10 years to upgrade our radio system. A year would be a massive change in the way we operate. In Ukraine, it was being done every day, and that culture prevailed everywhere.
And that culture was contagious. Before long, Olaf and Soren decided they wanted to build drones for Ukraine themselves, so they started taking meetings. 2 20-somethings making the rounds. They even sat down with Mikhailo Fedorov, Ukraine's defense minister. And while he was interested in their drones, he quickly got to the point.
But if you can't make 5,000 of these a month, you're wasting our time and you should go home. And that's a minimum. And we left that meeting kind of a bit in shock, but then I think we also really understood what the challenge was.
The challenge wasn't building a better drone, it was building enough of them. And when Fedorov told them how many he wanted for a second, Olaf and Soren thought he might be kidding. The number seemed that big.
America built something like 30,000 drones last year.
What America builds in a year, Ukraine can burn through 1/3 of that in a single day.
We immediately started, Googling like, okay, let's build 5,000 drones a month. Well, we need to buy radios for these 5,000 drones a month. We need to buy flight computers, motor drivers.
And soon they discovered they couldn't simply buy enough of the parts they needed for a price that made sense.
They wanted thousands of dollars per radio. And we said, no, we're selling the drone for $500. How can we have a, multi-$1,000 radio? And it was so clear that the American industrial base was not used to producing systems like this.
So they did what a lot of people in Ukraine seem to be doing. They stopped looking for an existing solution and started building their own.
Let's build it ourselves. Let's build our own radios. Let's build our own flight computers. Let's build our own drone factory.
Neither of them had set out to start a defense company. They were just trying to solve the next problem in front of them, then the next one, and the next one. Today, Olaf and Soren's company, they called it Neuros, supplies drones used in Ukraine and has contracts with the Pentagon. But for Olaf, success isn't measured in contracts or production numbers. It's measured in something much harder to carry: responsibility.
I remember I got the first phone call of someone on the front line that was using our system, and just in the voice, the fear of like, this person, has a very good chance of death if the system doesn't work. Every connection I make, every component that goes onto that board has to work. Otherwise, that person will probably die. And the intensity of that weighs on me very, very, very heavily. I think about it every day.
And this is where the story starts getting uncomfortable, because Olaf and Soren weren't generals. They weren't elected officials. They were 20-something drone racers, the kind of people who, not so long ago, were teaching themselves electronics on YouTube. And now, they were helping shape the future of warfare. So you're a private company. Nobody elected you. And yet, you're shaping what's happening on a battlefield. Does that feel strange to you?
It does. It does. I don't believe in this idea of the corporate elite sitting around in a boardroom and then choosing, Ukraine, you get to live today, but Venezuela, you do not. That doesn't seem like a world I would want to live in.
But spending time in Ukraine had changed him, because alongside questions about who would shape a war was a more basic one. How do you stop one?
I had seen, in my opinion, unequivocal proof that if a country doesn't build weapons, if the country doesn't have credible deterrence, war happens.
And he says countries that fail to adapt won't stay ahead for long.
In the West, we treat defense systems as these very complex systems that can only be worked on by a select few folks that have the right connections in DC. But unfortunately, that is not compatible with the pace of iteration that the front line requires. And that's the only way to stay relevant, is to iterate very quickly at the pace of YouTube and not of National Defense Authorization Acts.
The lesson Olaf took from Ukraine wasn't really about drones. It was about where innovation comes from. A few years ago, Olaf was spending his weekends racing drones through cornfields. Now, he's helping build systems used on the front lines of a war. And maybe that's the thing Ukraine figured out before everybody else, that some of the people best equipped for this new era of warfare don't necessarily come from military academies or defense contractors. Sometimes they come from YouTube. This is Click Here. Here's what you need to know about the tech world this week. It's Tuesday, July 7th. A few weeks ago, the Trump administration blocked some of the most powerful AI models in the world. Now, it's done an about-face.
The Trump administration has lifted export restrictions on Anthropic's most advanced AI models.
Those models are Claude Fable 5 and Mythos 5. The restrictions came after cybersecurity researchers found a way around Fable 5's safeguards, making it easier to find and potentially exploit software vulnerabilities. Now Fable 5 is back, and Mythos 5 is too, but only for a small group of organizations approved by the federal government. And that back and forth points to something bigger. The most powerful AI models may be built in Silicon Valley, but increasingly, Washington gets a say in who gets to use them. Last week, the House passed a major bill designed to make the internet safer for kids. It was bipartisan and sailed through the House, and almost immediately, the trouble started.
The Kids Internet and Digital Safety Act, or KIDS Act, is already coming under fire.
The bill would give parents more control over what their kids see online. It would limit the use of minors' data for advertising, and it would require AI chatbots to remind young users that they're not human. But the criticism is coming from both directions. Some child safety advocates say the bill doesn't go far enough. Privacy and free speech groups say it goes too far, because enforcing it could mean checking the ages of everyone online, not just kids. And the Senate has its own stricter version, which means the biggest fight over kids and the internet may no longer be whether Washington should step in, it's what the internet looks like when it does. Major sporting events usually come with tight security. At this year's World Cup, some of that security is looking up.
Security forces say they have already intercepted and neutralized hundreds of unauthorized aerial intrusions.
Drones have made an unannounced appearance. The FBI says it has taken down more than 500 of them over World Cup host cities since the tournament began. Flying one into restricted airspace can mean a fine of up to $100,000, a year in prison, and losing the drone. And in host cities, the FBI has deployed teams with technology that can detect, track, and intercept aircraft in the sky. The World Cup ends later this month, but some of the systems being used to protect it may live on. And finally, the drama inside OpenAI is coming to the big screen.
The film about OpenAI, it's starring Andrew Garfield as Sam Altman.
The film is called Artificial, and it tells the story of 5 extraordinary days in 2023 when OpenAI's board fired Sam Altman. The company's employees revolted, and Altman got his job back. But now the movie has some drama of its own. Amazon MGM Studios was backing the nearly finished $40 million project, and then earlier this month, Amazon walked away.
Why? Well, it might be that Amazon is investing $50 billion in OpenAI as part of a strategic partnership that will accelerate OpenAI's use of Amazon Web Services.
Enter Neon, the studio behind award-winning movies like Anora and Parasite. It has picked up the film and said to expect its release later this year. Click Here is a production of Recorded Future News and PRX. Today's show was written and produced by Megan Dietrich, Sean Powers, Erica Gutta, Zach Hirsch, and Maya Fawaz. It was edited by Karen Duffin and Sarah Cavedo, and fact-checked by Darren Ankrum. Original music is by Ben Livingston, with additional music from Blue Dot Sessions. Our staff writer is Lucas Riley, our illustrator is Megan Goff, and our sound designers and engineers are Jake Cook and Jesse Neiswanger. I'm Dina Temple-Raston, and thanks for listening.